You know that feeling, right? You spend years learning a language. You've memorized every single grammar rule, but then the moment you actually try to speak, you just freeze up. It's super frustrating, and it points to this big idea we're going to talk about, something we can call the grammar paradox.
So, this is the big question. Why does this happen? How can someone know all the rules, ace all the tests, but still struggle to have a simple, flowing conversation? Well, the answer isn't really about what grammar we're teaching, but how we're teaching it.
To really get to the bottom of this paradox, you've got to understand that there are two totally different ways of thinking about grammar in the classroom. It's kind of like a battle between the old school way and the new school way. And this right here is the heart of it. On one side, you have the traditional prescriptive view. This is where grammar is a strict set of laws. You have to learn the law before you're allowed to speak. But on the other side, there's the modern functional view. This sees grammar as a tool for communication, something you learn while you're actually using the language. It's like the difference between just studying a map versus actually getting out and exploring the city. So what happens when you follow that traditional rule-first method? Well, this is what you get. You end up with students who are incredibly accurate, on paper at least. They can get a great score on a test. But when it's time to speak, their fluency is way down. They can't keep a conversation going. Now let's flip that. Look at the modern view. It's pretty much the exact opposite, right? The main goal is communication, just getting your point across. So students become really fluent. Yeah, they might make a few mistakes here and there, but they can actually talk to people. The goal is connection, not perfection. So, if you boil it all down, what's the one single thing that separates these two approaches? It all comes down to that first moment, the moment a new grammar rule is introduced to the student. The old school way uses what's called the deductive method. You can probably picture it. The teacher is at the front of the room, says, okay, here's the rule, and then the students just practice it over and over. It's a top-down approach, going from the general rule to specific examples. The problem is the student is just passively sitting there, receiving information. But the modern approach completely flips the script with the inductive method. And honestly, this is a total game changer. Instead of just giving the rule, the teacher shows examples, maybe words like cat, bat, and mat, and then asks the students, hey, what do you notice here? What's the pattern? The students get to be detectives. They discover the rule for themselves. It's a bottom-up journey, and it's so much more powerful. Okay, this table really lays it all out. This is probably the most important slide for anyone who wants to teach. The inductive method goes from example to rule. It's natural, and the students are active. The deductive method is the opposite. Rule to example, formal, and the students are passive. And you can see right there at the bottom, for beginners especially, that active discovery you get with the inductive method is almost always the way to go. It builds real intuitive understanding. So if you're going to take away just one single thing from all of this, let it be this next part. This is really the guiding principle for any modern language teacher. Here it is, the golden rule. Always prefer the inductive method, especially for beginners. Why? Because when you let students discover the rules, learning stops feeling like a boring lecture and starts feeling like solving a fun puzzle. It helps grammar feel natural, a lot like how we all learned our first language as kids, right? We just figured it out. Okay, so you might be thinking, does this mean grammar rules don't matter at all? No, not quite. The importance of grammar really just depends on the context. It plays a completely different role when we're speaking compared to when we're writing. And this chart shows you exactly what I mean. When you're in a live conversation, fluency is king. The main goal is just to get your idea across and be understood. But when you're writing something down, the whole game changes. Accuracy becomes way, way more important because the reader isn't there to ask you what you meant. So think about it from the teacher's perspective. When a student is speaking, the number one question should be, did the message get through? If the answer is yes, then hey, that's a win. The priority has to be encouraging them to talk more and build their confidence, not jumping on every tiny mistake. That just shuts them down. Seriously, let's just pause and think about that. Imagine you're trying your best to speak a new language. In every few words, the teacher stops you to correct you. How would that make you feel? What would that do to your confidence? Well, what it does is it creates something called the affective filter. You can think of it like a wall that goes up in your brain. It's an emotional barrier made of fear and anxiety. When a student is constantly worried about making a mistake, that filter goes way up, and it literally blocks them from learning and from speaking. They just freeze. But like we said,
Writing is a different story. This is the place where accuracy is everything. Since there's no real-time back and forth, your grammar has to be clear for your message to be clear. So the editing process is the perfect time for a teacher to give that detailed feedback without stressing the student out.
All right, so let's pull all of this together. Think of this next part as a simple, easy-to-remember playbook for teaching grammar in a way that actually works. So here's your cheat sheet. The best method? It's inductive. Start with the example, let them find the rule. You want to teach grammar functionally, in a real context, not as a separate, boring subject. And remember, the main goal is always communication. That means for speaking, we care most about fluency. For writing, we care most about accuracy. The big idea is to weave grammar into reading and writing so it just feels like a natural part of using the language.
And really, it all comes down to this one simple, powerful idea. Grammar isn't the finish line. It's just the tool we use to get there, to connect with other people.
So I'll just leave you with this to think about. When we're teaching, what are we really trying to do? Are we just teaching the list of rules that have to be memorized for a test? Or are we giving our students something much bigger? The beautiful, messy, and absolutely essential art of communication.